All right, everyone. Jeremy Knopf here with another episode of the Public Relations Declassified Livestream. And got a couple of really interesting topics today. And we've also got two special guests, Dr. Fern Kazlow and Dr. Carlos Garcia, two of my favorite people. We're going to have them pop in and touch on a topic that I've covered a few times, but it's something that they have a very deep knowledge on, and they have got a lot of insight on this topic. But we're going to go ahead and get started with an interesting topic that I found basically trending. A series of TikTok videos went viral. And what we're going to talk about today is what to do when somebody goes viral by lying about you. Now, give you guys a little bit of context about this particular story. And this one is a bit of a mess. But the situation is, there was this lady who fell in love with her therapist and was convinced that her therapist was in love with her as well. So she put out this long series of videos on TikTok, which then ended up going viral. Unfortunately, she did also name her therapist in the videos. So it made it obvious to everyone who she was talking about. And this guy, you know, through no fault of his own, is now kind of dealing with some blowback from that situation. I'm going to go ahead and play the video for you guys real quick, just so you can get a sense of how absolutely batshit crazy this lady is. And it's also worth noting that this is something that happens fairly frequently with therapists, right? People feel like, well, first of all, people become attracted to and often fall in love with their therapists. And many times they also feel that the therapist reciprocates their feelings, which usually is not the case. So let's roll this crazy video and check this one out.
I need to address three things. One, people are asking me what my mental health diagnosis is. I do not have BPD. I do not have psychosis. I have ADHD, and I was experiencing extreme limerence with my psychiatrist. Limerence is a normal thing to happen to anyone who is experiencing hot and cold behavior from someone. And it happens more often in people with ADHD because we have dopamine dysregulation and rejection sensitive dysphoria. And guess what? My psychiatrist knew that and used it to his advantage. Two, I accidentally said my psychiatrist's first name in one of my videos. If you clocked it, good for you. I do not owe him anonymity. However, this is not about doxing my psychiatrist. This is about me sharing my story so other people can view predatory behavior in people in power. Okay? If anyone doxes my psychiatrist with his last name or city that he works in or clinic that he works in, your comment will be immediately deleted and you will be blocked. This is about protecting other victims, not doxing my psychiatrist. If you do some investigative work and you want to DM me about it, I'm open to that, okay? Three, I need to take a moment. Moment taken. It is so incredibly disturbing to me, the amount of people that are predator protectors in my comments, that are victim blaming me, especially the mental health practitioners in my comments using therapy speak to say that this situation that I was in was my fault or that I was delusional. Check yourself. You're giving me more ammunition to share my story because it just goes to show how absolutely messed up the mental health industry is and how protected people who do this kind of sick psychological manipulation are. So I will continue with my story tomorrow. I will see you all then.
Yeah, she seems well, huh? And for what it's worth, I don't know anyone that opens up a conversation like, I am not diagnosed such and such. That to me, that pretty much sounds like, yes, that's exactly what you were diagnosed with. But all right, so a couple of things to unpack on this. This particular person, I think most people can see what's going on here, and they can see that this lady is not all there. Also, the fact that multiple other therapists, psychologists, psychotherapists, whatever, there's probably subtle differentiation between all those terms. In fact, maybe Dr. K and Dr. Garcia can provide a little insight on that. But if her therapist is saying this, and all of these other therapists are coming in and saying this, and gobs and gobs and gobs of normal people are also coming in and saying the same thing, well, there's a common denominator here, and you don't have to be a mathematician to find it. Unfortunately, this has created a problem for the therapist, and he's in a situation where you can't use most of the typical strategies that you would use in a situation like this due to HIPAA laws, right? There's things he can't say. In fact, I believe that he can't even say anything really publicly, even addressing this in any way, shape, or form, which puts him into a bit of a problem. Now, for those of you who may be in the medical community and you run into a situation like this, how do we solve this problem, right? We can't come out here and rebut the person publicly. We can't come out and talk about their diagnosis and say, well, no, that person's actually crazy, and here's why. So they're very limited, but there are still some things that you can do if you're in the medical profession and you are being unfairly attacked, and that creates a PR crisis for you. So what can we do? What should we do in a situation like this? Well, the first thing that I would recommend in a situation like this is obviously cutting it off before it becomes a problem. So if you get the sense that somebody is going down the path that this particular lady has gone down, one of the things that I would do if I was a therapist, or if I was advising a therapist or any medical professional, frankly, what I would advise is bring another party into the equation, right? If you're a therapist, maybe you bring another therapist into the meetings. Obviously, that's going to cost more for the patient. And this honestly could apply to any kind of doctor, right? If there's something weird going on, of course, you can always bring another professional in. If you're just like, if you're a regular doctor, you could bring your nurse into the meetings with the patients, maybe an office manager, whatever. Like, there's a lot of options out there, but what you want to do is break that narrative that person has in their head and make it very clear that no, there's nothing here. There's no relationship. There's nothing. It's just a patient-doctor relationship, right? By bringing that other person in, you're breaking that narrative, and they will probably either fix their thinking or they'll leave and go somewhere else. Either way, it's a win for you because you get to avoid the problem. Another thing that you can do is start creating content that explains this particular phenomenon. So this phenomenon, so she mentioned a word, limerence, and that's basically like an infatuation with somebody. The more accurate description of what's going on here is something called transference, where people become attracted to and often fall in love with their therapists. I'm not sure if this happens with, regular medical doctors as well, or if it's just the therapy type of doctors, but it is very common with therapists. So this happens all the time. So this is a great opportunity to create content about that particular topic. And then if somebody starts searching for you, they're going to find this content, and it's going to explain the phenomenon that's going on. Now, obviously, some people may still think that you did something wrong, but the vast majority of people who, by the way, don't even know about this term transference, they don't know that it exists, they don't know that it's a thing. But if you have a lot of content about transference and people come check out your profile on social media, or they go to your website and they come across this content, now they can look at that content and say, oh, hey, well, wait a minute, maybe that's what's going on here, because this is a thing that happens a lot. So That's a really good way to do that. You can also create content around kind of tangential topics. So, you might do some content around the emotional aspects of crushes, right? How they start, what triggers them, how they grow, how to tell if it's real or limerence, since that seems to be a popular word these days, right? You could also do topics around how therapists deal with this problem or how they fix this problem, things like that. And that's just educating the public and showing them that this thing over here that's going on that seems like a big issue is actually bullshit. And here's why, right? Now, you don't want to ever come out and say it like that. You want to address those topics purely in a clinical perspective. And you don't want to ever address the person by name. You don't want to give any details whatsoever that could allow anybody to connect the dots between that topic and that person who has decided that they've fallen in love with you and vice versa. So those are some great ways to create some killer content that helps to push back on this particular problem without breaking any kind of HIPAA violations. Another thing that you could do is you could actually create case studies. Now, you could do these in text, you could do them in video, right? And in the case of video, it's going to be you talking through the situation the same way you would do it if you're writing it, but now it's just going to be you on video talking about that particular client, their problems, how you helped them, what you did with them, problems that occurred along the way, all of that, the typical stuff you would put in any kind of case study. Now, like I said, we have to be crystal clear that we never disclose anything that could connect that patient or that story to that patient, because that would then be a HIPAA violation. And you would be in for a much larger PR crisis if you start spilling that. But anonymity is the absolute key to this. And the more detail you can put in, the better. If you're going to do a video case study, I think probably a 5, 10, maybe 15-minute video kind of breaking down the whole situation with as much detail as you have. That's good. I wouldn't go anything beyond that. Generally speaking, the shorter the better. But from that case study, and then also on the crushes and transference topics as well, and anything tangential, you've got the bigger overall videos, but then you've also got micro content that you can chop out of that and use that on, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, etc. And if you're going to make micro content out of that, I generally recommend keeping it under 3 minutes, because then it's eligible for YouTube Shorts. I have to double check. Maybe somebody knows off the top of their head. I don't remember, because I haven't used TikTok in a while. I don't remember what the length is for TikTok. So I think it's right around that range. I'm just not sure exactly. But YouTube, I know it's under 3 minutes for shorts. So create the long form content for all these topics, but then also go back and chop it up into micro content and flood the internet with that stuff. And that's going to help push back on some of this without explicitly calling out the individual, without explicitly rebutting that individual, mentioning their name, anything like that. That will help you to eliminate the problem without exposing yourself to any liability in regards to HIPAA, and also without further exacerbating your PR crisis. Now, something to mention here is what may happen if you do that is that person, depending on their state of mind, depending on their situation, depending on what's going on in their life, they may take that as something that it's not. They may take it as you communicating with them or you sending them a secret message or something like that. So just be aware of that. Pay attention to how they're responding. And this is a good way to solve the problem. You can never make this go away completely. But if you do find yourself in this situation, those are some really effective ways to mitigate the damage that it could cause to your practice. And I think we'll have Dr. Kazlow and Dr. Garcia share their thoughts on this after we bring them on the next topic, which is overcoming imposter syndrome to become a recognized authority in your industry. Now, this is a topic I talk about a lot because it has a huge impact, either positive or negative, depending on how it plays out. So what is imposter syndrome? Let's start there. It is basically insecurity. And we all face this to some degree. The smarter you are, the bigger this problem is going to be. I don't know if you've noticed this, but the dumbest people in the world are often the people that never doubt themselves. It's the intelligent people who struggle with that. It's the intelligent people who doubt themselves and think, well, maybe I don't know as much as I thought I did, or maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. That's something called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And basically, I actually wish I had pulled up a graphic for this for you guys, but basically look at it like this. Like, you got a chart here. Try and do this here. You got the bottom line, which is your experience, right? Your level of knowledge. And then you've got the line on the other side of that chart, that graph, that is your confidence. Now, what's going to happen here, I'm going to try and do this since I'm working backwards here. All right, so in the beginning, you're over here and you have no experience. You have no real knowledge. You're brand new in your industry. Your confidence is towards the bottom of the chart. Understandable, because you don't know shit. As you start learning things, you're going to learn very rapidly and exponentially increase your knowledge. So what happens then is your confidence skyrockets. And then as you continue learning, you realize all the things that you didn't know. You realize that you didn't know anywhere near as much as you thought you did. And then your confidence, where are we here? Your confidence starts to plummet, right? And then slowly it starts to come back up as you develop more experience. But it never goes away. The smarter that you are, the more problematic this will be for you, because you're always going to look for things that you don't know. You're always going to learn new things. If you're constantly improving, you're constantly going to realize that when you thought you had all this expertise, you didn't have anywhere near as much as you actually thought you did. So this is really common. Now, there's a couple of myths related to this. One is that you have to know everything. You have to be top of the food chain type expert in order to get out here and share your knowledge, share your expertise, to give advice. And that's not true, because experience or expertise is relative. So, when I first got into SEO, I didn't really know a lot, right? And this was a long, long time ago, before I left that industry several years ago. I didn't know shit. But as I started learning things, I started sharing what I had learned along the way. And I wasn't considered at the time, one of the top experts. But I still shared my knowledge because to somebody, that knowledge was very useful. They didn't have it yet. So we don't have to be the top of the food chain to share our insight. Another myth is that you have to be declared an expert by some other person or some other organization. Now, you don't have to be. It helps, but you don't have to be. It used to be the case, and that's not really the case anymore. Social media and technology has changed that, where we all can get out here and create content and share and talk about what we know to millions upon millions of people without the infrastructure of the media or big events or anything like that. So today you are the media. So you might as well get out there, share the content, share your knowledge, help other people. And in doing so, you become a more recognized authority in your industry. You make more money and all that good stuff, right? So one of the questions I get a lot from this is, should you fake it till you make it? And my answer on that is always no. First of all, that's fraud. If you don't know what the hell you're talking about, you shouldn't be out there pretending that you do. And if you're faking it, you're very likely going to say something stupid, something incorrect that is going to damage your reputation. So I'll give you guys an example that I always find amusing. Back when I was in the SEO industry, there was this guy who was brand new. He was just getting started and didn't really know shit. So what he would do is he would look at the questions that were on some of the SEO forums. And then he would go over to the private SEO Facebook groups, ask the questions in there, and then he'd come back to the forums and answer those questions as if those were his own answers. And, he got a little bit of traction at first, but people pretty quickly realized what was going on. And then they realized that the guy was full of shit. And it didn't help him that he leveraged attacking other SEO pros as an attempt to get, more awareness on him and what he was talking about. And that's a pretty common tactic. But once people figured out what he was doing, his reputation was pretty much trashed. He got nowhere. And then people started digging deeper into his background. And they found a few videos of him on Pornhub, believe it or not. So I don't know if he uploaded them himself or how they ended up there. But that pretty much was the final nail in his coffin as far as his career in that industry went. So we don't want to do the fake it till you make it thing. That's bad. And it also will hurt your confidence because you know you're full of shit. So we don't want to do that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to bring up Dr. Kazlow and Dr. Garcia, and they are going to share some of their insight. Now, these are two of my favorite people. They are licensed psychotherapists, and there may be some terminology issues on that, but anyway, I'll let you guys talk about that. But why don't you start off by introducing yourselves, and then we'll talk about some of the things that you guys do to help your patients get through their imposter syndrome and build their confidence up. We'll do ladies first.
Would you like to?
Okay.
I'm old school.
I'm Dr. K, Dr. Fern Kazlow. Been doing psychotherapy for decades, over 100,000 hours of it, focused on high achievers. And if I can I jump back? Because more than making the distinctions, you've brought up some great topics and really great suggestions. Can I jump back to the one about the therapist and love?
I don't know if you could jump back. There's a wall right behind you.
Or jump forward or whatever. Anyway.
Yes.
So this
let's let Carlos introduce himself first, and then we'll jump into that.
Awesome.
Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, Dr. Carlos Garcia. I've been a psychologist for about 10 years, and work a lot with sort of executives and CEO types and high achievers.
Awesome, and a U.S. Marine Corps veteran as well. Hoorah!
That's right.
All right, Fern, go ahead with what you had.
So when you talked about, this doesn't happen often, it happens often. This happens a lot. And so I want to say a couple things about what you said and then add some things. What your advice was fantastic, because not only can you make this not so bad as it starts out, you can actually turn it to your advantage. If you know what you're doing and you hire somebody like you who, I've seen PR people give me advice in situations that would have cost me my license. I mean, seriously, would have cost me my license. So having someone who knows that, terrain is really important, because you can, if you respond well, you can have people gain trust in you instead of losing trust. This happens, okay? It's not like you can get rid of every patient that starts to have feelings for you, because it's part of the territory. And it's different than other doctors, because if you fall in love with your surgeon, you can actually date your surgeon.
Does that happen as often with regular doctors as it does with therapists?
Well, what I'm saying is I don't know if it happens as often, but it happens. It's part of when somebody understands you, responds to you differently than your parents, than your spouse, kind of what you've always been looking for. It's easy to have those feelings come up. It's when it goes over a certain point. So you've got to be able to evaluate, is this a normal, or is this something that I really need to refer out? But it's part of the territory, and it's part of what helps people get through it and get better and, accomplish all the things they came into therapy for. So this is where, and we were talking about it before with Dr. Garcia and you, it's like therapists need, especially in the beginning years, but truly, if something's coming up that's tough, you want a supervisor. We call them supervisors. It's not like in the business world, but they're really somebody that's been there, done that. And to me, if you're going to get a supervisor, you want somebody good clinically if this is going on. And if you get in the media where there's an issue, you want somebody who actually has experience, like I know Carlos and I do. You want somebody who has experience in the media. And also, if you can, and I've been in that situation, in court, where you've been called to testify. So having those kinds of experiences really helps. So having a supervisor, knowing that this is part of the territory, knowing when you should refer out and when it's just part of the process, and not making them wrong, but your response is key to how they handle it with you or with somebody else. and also how you look in the public. If you do this non-defensively, if you do this with expertise, if you do it with confidence and not arrogance, and not any way implicating that they're crazy. Sometimes they are, but most of us, it's like people come into therapy and it's part of the territory. If you can be respectful, and you can actually gain the kind of clients you want from your response, and lots more PR if you do it well. Dr. Garcia, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I hesitate to sort of have a strong opinion until I know sort of both sides, right, or more of what is happening. But I agree with you, Fern, in that this is something that happens, right? If you're, I think that even psychiatrists are a little bit different than therapists. And if you look at sort of what psychiatrists do, in the past, they were more about sort of doing psychotherapy and counseling. And then, if they felt that medications were necessary, they would sort of go to that. But it seems like psychiatrists these days really just kind of spend 5, 10, 15 minutes with you and are dealing with medication management. So this tends to happen a lot more often with a therapist, a psychotherapist. Some of these terms are sort of interchangeable. And to Dr. K's point, right, like you're finally feeling sort of seen by somebody, validated. Somebody is really holding space for you in a way that maybe you haven't experienced before. And so this term of transference is very relevant. And what transference essentially is essentially a projection of an emotion or an experience that the client is having about that therapist. So a perfect example is, I don't know, you grew up with a really angry father that always sort of shamed you and made you feel like you were worthless. Well, you might be working with a male therapist, and the male therapist challenges you with some questions, and you might sort of take that as like, well, why are you being like my father? Why do you keep shutting me down? Well, that's a projection, right? An important thing to sort of also understand here is that there's also a terminology called countertransference, which is the ways that a therapist might project their, perspective onto a client. And so, I've been training therapists for many, many years here. And one of the things that I always get them to sort of look at is like, hey, can you check into the responses, biased or unbiased, conscious or unconscious, that might be coming up for you around the work that you're doing? So having a supervisor, to Dr. K's point, is absolutely critical so that you can be checking yourself as well.
And I think to that point, we have to really acknowledge that it does happen sometimes that therapists are out of line because of their own countertransference, because of their history, because of the fact that, to be really honest, people that go into therapy have had challenged lives. That's why they're there. If you had I don't know anybody who's had the perfect family, the perfect life, et cetera, or maybe they think they do. But when those issues have been real for you, it often impacts. Same as medical doctors that have had some big health condition and it's been cured, and they go into medicine in that way. So I think it's important to acknowledge, not defensively, that this does happen. It does happen. That
do you think
what?
Do you think there's any merit to bringing that up ahead of time, like when you first meet with a patient, and say, like, this is a common thing that happens and I want you to be aware of it?
It depends on the patient, because you don't want to. Everything is going to be to what Dr. Garcia said, is that you really have to feel it out. There may be some people, I always say that you get the issues that are going to come up from that. It used to be that you got on the phone and made the first appointment. Now it may be online or by email, but you get the issue right away. And so it may be that you address that or something related and lay it out, or it may be that you really don't, because that is going to hurt the process instead of helping it. But I think what Dr. Garcia said, our countertransference is huge. Therapy works because of the change happens in relationship. And one of the issues, and one of the reasons that, it's so important to be trained, and one of the issues that comes up with coaching, is that coaches don't get trained in this the way therapists do. And they're allowed to go out for coffee with their clients. We can't. It's very, very different. So really understanding your triggers, your places, the places where you can unconsciously either encourage something, or your response can be not a great thing. So it's countertransference, and it's transference always. And that's why you really need to do your own therapy. A lot of programs, to become a psychologist, you don't have to do much of that. You need to do much of it, years of it. both your own therapy and supervision. Therapists need supervision for years. I firmly believe that anybody doing coaching should have it as well, with somebody, not just who's a great marketer for coaches, but somebody who really understands the terrain. All this trauma-informed coaching, they don't have a clue for the most part. Some do. I don't want to make a blanket statement, but it's a very serious terrain to be entering into. And I've had experiences where I've had patients that were really harmed by people. Go back to your Dunning-Kruger, who thought they knew so much and didn't know what they didn't know. And I had one patient in her 30s that became a bedwetter because of the way somebody that was certified in hypnotherapy had worked with her. It was devastating.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about what people can do to kind of get over this problem, right? So one of the things I always recommend is getting outside of your bubble. I find that when we're in with all of our industry people and we're surrounded by expertise, that's where the bar is set. But you get out to the people you're serving, they don't have anywhere near that level of experience. So we create this kind of distorted perspective of what other people know. So give us your thoughts on that aspect.
Dr. Garcia, you want to go first?
Yeah, and I'm glad, Jeremy, that you sort of spoke a little bit about some of the sort of factors that contribute to this, feeling of imposter syndrome. One is that you're right; it's absolutely natural, right? If you're a novice at something, if you're in a situation where you're learning, like there's a lot of uncertainty, right? But I think getting out of your industry, getting out and around other people, putting your knowledge out there is one really great strategy. Because it starts to sort of give you feedback about where you are or where you might need to make some shifts and some changes. For me, I think the biggest thing is to check in with yourself and see how much of your imposter syndrome is coming from a narrative that you might carry around, that often a lot of us may carry around not feeling like you're enough, right? Mm-hmm. And because the issue there is, no matter how much you know in that field or any other, that won't shift for you no matter how much you achieve or how much you feel that you know. So if it's coming from that place, that's important to know as well.
Yeah, so I want to say that is the first place I would go. And then I want to talk about culturally how we amplify this, because we're so often taught to fake it till you make it, which you said is fraud, but it's more than fraud. It is fraud, but it also really projects to the world something fake, even if they don't know what they're picking up, and it projects it to us. So many people have those issues, especially high achievers, right? They have those issues of, okay, like, what they've been put down, they haven't felt enough, they've been recognized, but they've been conflict. There's all kinds of issues that make this come up. But then you have a culture that says to them, fake it till you make it, encourages that. And they feel more like a fake than ever. And they actually get responses back, because when you're faking it, it's not like it's so obvious. Sometimes it's really obvious, but more often it's very subtle. And people pick up something and they don't know what they're picking up. And it just muddies everything. So look at yourself first, and then look at this whole thing of, am I faking? To me, imposter syndrome is a signal. It's a signal. And it's a signal to look at yourself. What's really going on? Am I being inauthentic? Is there something I really need to learn? Am I pretending to know something that I don't know? And as long as I'm doing that, and that's not to say, look, I know it's true about you, Jeremy. I'm guessing it's true about you, Dr. Garcia. We've all been in situations where people like us kind of step in and say, yeah, I can do that. And then we have to learn, right? It's just part of who we are. But but we know it and we have to learn it, as opposed to when you do it from that place of like, oh yeah, I know how to do that, is a different way of presenting. And it affects the people you communicate with. And it's like there's a spidery sense that people have. But the worst part is that it makes you feel more like a fake. And then it affects how you feel about yourself, how you act, how you do PR, whatever it is that you're doing, it comes through.
Indeed. One of the things that you touched on, how do I describe this? The internal part of this, right? Like if we're up here, we know we're faking it. Even if we carry ourselves confidently, standing up straight. You got your shoulders nice and back. You got a good stage presence. If you're full of shit and you know it, that comes across in your energy. And people may not immediately know what's off, but they feel that something's off. And that kind of triggers that subconscious, I guess, fear or uncertainty in that engagement,
it's
that
trust.
relationship.
The whole thing that you're trying to build is trust. And one of the things I always say is that the camera picks up even what you may not be aware of. So if I watch something later, I'll watch a client of mine who says, you know, would you watch this interview I did? I will see where something that they haven't even consciously been aware of, the camera will pick it up. It's an incredible phenomena to see, but the camera doesn't lie. Body doesn't lie, and the camera doesn't lie.
Indeed. You know, when it comes to teaching other people, you know, we're out here, we're sharing our knowledge. Obviously, that helps build our own confidence. But there's another aspect of this, and there may be some psychological components to this that I haven't really considered. But when you are teaching other people a thing, you have to communicate with them differently than you would with industry peers, right? Like when you guys talk about psychological topics, none of it is like these big medical terms and crazy, you know, complicated stuff. You break it down in a way that the average person who didn't go to medical school and go through all this education that you guys did, that they can understand that. And, you know, that's, for what it's worth, that's also how we did things in the military, right? It was a constant learning, right? The lowest, the most junior guy in the unit had to educate other people. And one of the cool things that we used to do, I imagine, Carlos, you probably had similar experiences. We all had to give classes on something, even if it wasn't military related, right? We had this platoon commander, didn't really like the guy, but he was solid from a, you know, from a leadership perspective. And he was really serious about developing his men. And he one day had us all give a class. We could pick whatever the topic was. I gave mine on mixing various alcoholic beverages. And so, but we all had to stand up in front of the platoon and give a presentation teaching the platoon something. And that really helps us to refine our thoughts and be able to communicate more effectively. So not only are we demonstrating our expertise, but because we're having to communicate to a different type of audience, we're now becoming better communicators, which also helps us to improve our confidence. So what advice do you have for people when they're out here, you know, giving this advice? They're out here sharing their knowledge. What advice do you have for them to be able to do that effectively in a way that not only spreads their message, but also helps improve their confidence?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say humility, it goes a long way. I think that Dr. K was just talking about the culture, right? And I think that, I mean, let's be honest about the culture that we live in, which has a very high expectation for perfection and for achievement. And I think we get wrapped up in that sometimes, right? How we're not meeting up to that standard or that model. But my sort of advice to people is like, be your most authentic self, right? Because the sort of the fake it till you make it, the bullshit that you're trying to sort of weave into your message, it's going to be seen. It's going to come in as inauthentic. People are not going to resonate with your message. But if you're just real, if you just sort of admit to the things you know and don't know, like as we were watching that video, I had to go and Google, what was the term?
Limerence.
Limerence. I was like, I do not know that, right? And I have a psychology degree, right? But like, just be yourself. Be authentic, and I think your audience will come to you. Stop trying to pitch yourself to people that are not going to resonate with your message, and allow yourself to be who you are, so that the people that you can serve and who do resonate with your message will come to you.
Awesome. Dr.
Yeah,
K,
I think
did you have
that
anything?
be real is so key, and pay attention to who you're speaking to. It's not about you. It is about you, of course, because you're there and you're speaking and you want to, you know, look good and all the other things. But the more you come from connection, you know, I talk about connection powered marketing and branding and business, but it's really connection powered life. The more you can pay attention to them, the more you can feel that you're being real, that you're really talking with somebody instead of at somebody. that helps you to move out of that place where you have to posture. You can't posture and be connecting. So, and also to yourself, right? It's like one of the things I love to do. I think you have to practice. And Jeremy, you and I have talked about that a lot. You reach a certain point, you practice less, but you have to practice, especially in the beginning. And to pay attention, it goes back to what Carlos, what you said before about tuning in, to really learn to tune in. When do I feel off? When do I feel awkward, like a fake, like I'm wrapped up in how I look, or will I get business from this? Instead of really paying attention, am I serving my audience? Am I talking with them? Am I really following? If you do that, you can't be, I like try it. It's really hard. I mean, I guess you could try, but you can't be in that fake mode if you're really paying attention in a grounded, in your body, with good intention to be of service.
Yeah.
It's funny talking to two military people. I've never been in the military, but that idea of being in service really drives me. I want to serve every day, whether it's somebody I met in the airport, and my husband will make a lot of jokes about, you know, look for her. There's a dog, there's a baby, or someone who's telling her their life story. It's really about serving. And the more that comes across, and whether it's a 2-minute clip or whether it's a 45-minute interview, it's where you're coming from, and it's what's going to really draw people to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Giving value first, right? If you're putting the audience first, like your message will come, it'll come through clearly, and it will always be received well, I think.
Yeah. And it's less important to people, truly. It's like your polish isn't what it's about. They want to feel that you've been there for them and taken them in. And that's what's going to draw them. You know, that whole thing about, Jay Abraham, who's a big famous marketer, tells a story about, I don't know if you've heard this story, but he tells a story about how he met some person and they just talked forever. And when they were through, the person looked at him and said, "You're the most fascinating person I met." And he had said almost nothing. He had just really listened well. And their takeaway was, "Jay, you're the most fascinating person I've ever met," because he was a good listener. And care.
Love it. Love it. Since you said be real a few times, fun fact, that's actually Dr. K's rap name. She's got an album dropping shortly. No, but before we close out this segment, I do want to add something here. Dr. Garcia, you mentioned something that that I think is really important. And it was kind of like an offhand comment, but you know, you talked about kind of like not meeting the bar, like I guess where people are seeing what everyone else is doing and thinking they're not up to that same level. And one of the things that we really need to do, and this is hard for a lot of people, is realize that what you're seeing everyone else do is their fucking highlight reel. That's not their whole life. Like, you're looking at all of their most prominent wins. You're not looking at all their losses. You're not looking at all of their, you know, emotional struggles throughout the process. So that's a really important thing in dealing with imposter syndrome, is realizing that most of what you see is actually not reality. So,
can I share a story here real quick about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Imposter syndrome is so familiar to me because I have dealt with it for, you know, significantly in my life. You know, I came up feeling like I was somebody that didn't have a lot of confidence, that sort of any new thing that I would do, I always felt like I was at the bottom of the chain, right? Like, and, you know, as I got through the military and became a fireman and did all of those things, my confidence grew. But essentially what was happening in all of that was that I kept going into environments, novel environments, doing new things, thinking I didn't know how to do them, proving to myself that I can do them. And then looking around and being like, everyone else here is just like me. And no matter how much I keep climbing and what kind of rooms I keep finding myself in, I keep looking around and seeing like, everyone else here is just like me. Doesn't know shit, is figuring it out as they go. And like, we're all on the same boat, right? So to your point, I think that that's real and true. And probably something that you will experience as you're putting yourself out there and finding yourself in new places.
It's a great story. And I think, Dr. Garcia, you probably had it as I have. You'll get a client and they'll be talking about somebody that maybe you talked to like a couple of hours ago or the day before, and they're telling you how great their life is, how much more successful, and all these things that, as you said, aren't true. You know it, you can't say it, but you had them sitting in the room, whether it was virtually or in person telling you all the stuff they struggle with, but the person with imposter syndrome looking in, and even without it, doesn't see that. They see the crafted version. And I think, you know, doing what you just did, Dr. Garcia, sharing your story, sharing our own, like, you know, I'm scared now. This is scary. To be, I'm going to do it again and say being real about it, not as a game. Like this whole authentic thing is like we don't even hear it anymore. It's been so overused, but it's overused because it's so true. So I appreciate you sharing your story.
Awesome, guys. Tell the viewers how they can get in touch with you guys if they want to reach out to y'all.
My website, drkazlow.com, Facebook, X, LinkedIn. Any of those places, it's KAZLOW.
All right, Dr. Garcia.
Yeah, folks can find me on drcarlos.com or on Instagram at Dr. Carlos A. Garcia.
Love it.
Or you can reach out to Jeremy and he'll direct you.
Yeah.
Jeremy has sent a bunch of people to both of y'all, and he will continue doing so. Awesome. Well, listen, guys, thanks for joining us on this. The insight that you've shared is tremendously valuable. If you guys want to stick around, there may be some questions from some of the other viewers later on towards the end of this. But for now, we're going to go ahead and run into the next segment. So thanks for joining us today, guys, and we'll have you guys on with us again soon.
That's good.
Thanks, Jeremy.
All right, guys. All right. So next up, we're going to talk about how to leverage trending topics to craft a pitch that gets attention. Now, a mistake that I see a lot of people make is they'll just pitch their story. It's, oh, hey, you know, here's me, here's what I do, here's why I'm awesome, blah, blah, blah. And there's really nothing there. There's nothing to that. There's no substance. So when you can connect your story, to a trending topic, something that everyone else is already talking about, then you're going to get a hell of a lot more response to your pitches, right? You're reaching out to a journalist, you're pitching them a story. If it's something that people are already talking about, it's exponentially more likely that that turns into something. People want to be a part of what everyone else is already talking about. And interest equals traffic when it comes to the media outlets, right? So if everybody else is already talking about this topic and a media outlet puts a story out about it, well, then a lot of people are going to jump on that. And when it comes to media, visibility equals revenue, right? The more visitors they have, then the more advertising they can sell. So that's what they're looking for. They're looking for things where when somebody sees the headline, when somebody sees a quick summary of the story, they're going to want to go click on it and watch the video or read the article. So this is a really powerful tactic. It's something I've used for a while now. And, you know, I have found it exponentially more effective than pretty much any other strategy you can think of. So let's talk about how to connect the dots. So you can cover the story itself, right? Or the topic itself. You know, you can reach out and pitch a story related to something going on in the news. So right now, let me think. I've got another tab over here. I'll pull up and just grab a couple of quick trending topics here. Let's see. Where is this? Oh, why am I not seeing this? There we go. Oh, here we go. All right. So let's see. Right now, you got all the stuff going on in DC. You got some stuff with Minnesota Vikings. Here's an interesting one. All right, this one would be applicable to a lot of businesses. So GE Appliances boost U.S. manufacturing with a $3 billion investment. So let's say you're an entrepreneur of some sort. You could reach out to a journalist and pitch them based off of that, maybe talking about how that is going to help create a resurgence of manufacturing in the U.S. Maybe you're a consultant, and now you can talk about how a company can bring manufacturing back to the States, or how they can start manufacturing if they're not already, right? So you've got this information that is useful in general. It's just not very sexy. But when you tie it to a story that's already in the news, like this GE manufacturing story, you've now got something that's a lot more powerful of a hook. Okay. So coming in, providing additional information, either on the topic or how the topic might affect other people. You could do an analysis on it. Maybe you're a statistician. You've got access to data. Maybe you analyze a particular industry. So you can come in and take that story and then break that down. What does that mean? How does that impact the economy? How does that impact certain sectors of the economy? What does that mean for consumers? Things like that. And then as this all goes on, these create opportunities for you. So let's say you come out here and you're talking about a particular thing and you say, oh, well, you pitched this story, it turned into a news feature. And in that feature, you predicted that a certain thing that happened would result in a particular outcome. Okay. Well, that's awesome. Now let's say a week, a month, a year down the road, those predictions come to pass. Well, now you can use that to connect the trending topic to the next opportunity. Because if you have predicted something, and this is something I did with SEO back in the day, basically everything that's going on right now with Google, I predicted about 7 or 8 years ago. And it was in an article that I wrote for Search Engine Journal. I think it was called iSearch, something about AI and how it will impact the SEO industry. It's over there on Search Engine Journal. In fact, Chrissy, why don't you go ahead and grab that and drop it in the chat or drop it in the comments for everyone watching. But when you can come back and say, hey, I predicted this in this outlet, and now here's how it's all played out exactly the way I said, and now here's my next prediction, right? So you're now using these trending topics even past the point where they're trending. So this creates a lot of really cool ways to create a bunch of opportunity that you wouldn't get just by pitching your story in and of itself. So I'm going to share, I didn't set this up for some reason, but I'm going to go ahead and share a screen with you guys. We are going to look at X for a second. All right. And we are going to switch this up a little bit. We'll do it that way. All right. So I'm in X right now. And for context, this second menu item here, Explore on the right side, that is how you get here. But this is all of the topics at any given point in time that are trending on X. So what we're going to do here is just scroll through this. I talked about those 3 ones. Those are the some of the today ones. These are some of the other trending topics. So Zelensky, Sprout, whatever the hell that is. This is a hashtag. When it comes to hashtags, if you're going to leverage a hashtag, make sure you know what the hell the hashtag is about before you create any content related to it. Entenmann made a big fuck up with that one a few years ago. So you want to avoid that. You want to make sure that if you're going to do anything with a hashtag that you know exactly what the hell it's about. But yeah, as you just scroll through here, there's a whole bunch of trending stuff. You got this trending tab over here, break it down even more precisely. But you could come in here and look for all of these little trending topics and find ways to tie them into your content, right? Kevin Leary, I saw somewhere in here. There we go. Okay, so Kevin O'Leary, one of the originals on Shark Tank, super smart guy and a good human being as well. So he's trending. One of the things you could do is, let's say he has made a particular statement that you disagree with, or a particular statement that you agree with. Although I will say it tends to work better when you disagree with the person, but betting against somebody like Kevin's probably not the best bet for most people. But let's say you disagree with something that he believes. Reaching out and pitching a journalist to present a story that disagrees with his views, his thoughts on a particular topic could be a good way to get some attention. Now, you're going to want to look in a case like that and see, does this journalist usually cover that person in a positive light or in a negative light? for context, there's probably a few things that you could leverage that for. He's really pro-tariff. He's been talking about that on a bunch of TV shows lately. So like that would be an angle. You'd have to go through kind of some of his views, some of the things that he's talked about, and see where there might be some opportunities. But this is a great way to find a bunch of trending topics. I'm a big fan of X. I think it's a great platform all around, but it's also an amazing platform for finding trending topics that you can leverage in your publicity. Okay. So let's see. We're going to go ahead and share a different one. We're going to go ahead and remove that for a second. And we'll do a new screen share. We're going to look at Reddit. Did it not share? Screen share. Try it again. Why is this not working? There we go. All right. I will preface this by saying I fucking hate Reddit with a fiery passion. It is filled with some of the most horrible people that you could ever possibly imagine. And you likely will get penalized or even banned for talking about certain topics. So be very aware of that. I only use it for looking at what's going on. So if we look up here in the popular tab, so now we've got a whole bunch of topics. And some of these may work, some of them may not. Oh, here's an interesting one. This alien-looking rabbits with this weird disease going on in Colorado. I have no words for that. But Reddit's another opportunity. There's a lot of different topics that are trending, and it's a pretty large audience, right? Reddit's got a very large audience. So what's trending here is usually going to be a pretty good indicator of what's going to work well with the media also. All right, we're going to share another one here real quick, and I think we're getting up close to our time here. We're going to look at Google Trends for a minute. So, all right, check this out. This is kind of cool. So you can always search for whatever in here. Like I could put in my own name. And keep in mind, these are relative, right? So it doesn't mean, oh, well, that's interesting. Let's delete that and see. We'll try it again. There was two separate ones. Interesting. Okay, well, that's a first for me. But let's go back. So you've got Explore. You can look at some of the other topics that are trending. March Madness, that's a sports thing. Happy Gilmore 2 is kind of cool. You could probably find a lot of interesting ways to tie that to all kinds of topics. No idea what La Boo Boo is. Election results. But you can also narrow all this down by geography. So countries, and then if you do a country, like you do US, I think you can then do states as well. Maybe not. Used to be able to. You can change the time frame. So I could say, you know, past 4 hours, whatever. Okay, that's not going to help us. Past 7 days. You can do it by category. But then we can also go over here to this tab and click on Trending Now. And so now, and what I like to do is I will sort it by search volume, because I don't really care about the terms themselves. I just care about the level of interest. So we want to sort it in descending order. And then also take a look at these charts over here. So this shows you kind of what that timeline looks like. So for example, no idea what this is. Maybe Carlos does. Real Madrid, WSG, Tyrrell. I have no idea. But you can see it had a big spike, and then it dropped way off, and it's no longer really trending. Whereas Wings versus Fever, there's still a little bit of activity. Colorado Rabbits with Tentacles is still humming along pretty well. So this is a good way to find some other interesting topics. What's happening, that's trending because one of the main stars of the show died just recently. But always make sure you know what the topic actually is before you try and leverage it. Don't just grab a topic and run with it without really knowing the full context. Okay. So those are a few ways to find some trending topics and, get these really good hooks that are going to help you turn that pitch into something that's going to get their attention and become more likely to result in an actual media feature. All right. So we're going to jump into Jeremy's PR PSA real quick, and then we'll open this up for questions as well after that. So Jeremy's PR PSA for the day is you need more than a great story. You also need to present a confident image that reinforces it. Insecurity destroys authority status. And like we talked about in the earlier segment, if you're insecure, and we all are to some degree, but if you have a high level of insecurity because you're faking it or you just haven't developed the confidence yet, it doesn't matter how proficient you are. It doesn't matter how great you are at what you do. People are not going to perceive you as such because they sense that insecurity, or it's so blatant. It's just visible. It's obvious, right? So we have to not only be great at what we do, but we have to also carry ourselves with confidence, because that is going to have far more impact than anything else, right? People are looking at other people and analyzing, and this is subconscious, right? They're not generally doing it consciously, but they're analyzing your facial expressions, your movement, your presence. And what I mean by that is kind of how you take up space, right? Are you kind of like sulking off in the corner? Or are you standing up loud and proud and speaking confidently, right? So if you can't get the confidence down, it doesn't matter how amazing you are, you're never going to get the impact that you'd like. So that's why this imposter syndrome is such an important thing to address and deal with, so that you can minimize it. You're never going to eliminate it, I don't think. I think you'd have to be somewhat neurotic or narcissistic to get to the point where you're not affected by imposter syndrome at all. But there's a lot of things you can do to minimize that, and then in doing so, mitigate the damage that it could potentially do. So, Chrissy, do we have any questions from the audience? You're on mute. There you go. What you got?
Sorry, no question. Seems to love this topic. Need to have both of them back at some point.
Okay, I will tell you what, we will do that. And the next time we have them back, you guys need to pop on and ask them some questions and show them some love. All right, guys. Well, then that'll be a wrap for today. I want to thank our guests for joining us. Dr. K, Dr. Garcia, love you guys. You're the best. Lots of great insight you all shared that I think will help a lot of people. So for everyone who's with us, thanks for joining us today. If you found something valuable in this, I would love it if you would share this with somebody. If you're already in the Facebook group, if there's anybody you know that could benefit from this, please invite them to the group. Just takes a couple of clicks and a few seconds of your time, and it helps a bunch of people. So that's a wrap for today, guys. Look forward to seeing you all in the next episode. And that's a wrap.